Imagine waking up one day to find your peaceful getaway turned into a nightmare all because of a cabin you bought just outside your neighborhood. That's exactly what happened to me. I never expected that owning a small cabin just beyond the borders of my homeowners association's jurisdiction would lead to a $30,000 fine. It felt like a complete shock. How could the HOA claim authority over a property that wasn't even inside their area? At first, I thought it was just a simple mistake, but soon things escalated, and the HOA leaders started pushing hard, making it clear they wanted me to back down. The story isn't just about a fine. It's about power, control, and the unexpected. Fight one person can face when standing up to an organization that seems bigger than life. I'm not just dealing with rules and regulations. I'm fighting against an entire group of people who believe they can dictate what I can or cannot do, even when it's beyond their legal reach. You'll meet the HOA board members who decided to take this battle way too far, using every tool they had to pressure me. This isn't just my story, it's a cautionary tale about what can happen when communities take control too far and when leadership crosses the line between protecting the neighborhood and bullying a homeowner. The tension grew day by day. Letters turned into threats, and suddenly found myself tangled in legal battles I never wanted. And now, after months of fighting back, the tables have turned. Those same HOA leaders who tried to intimidate me are the ones now facing serious court challenges. How did this all happen? What pushed the HOA so far? And what's going to happen next in this unexpected showdown? Stick around, because in the next part, I'll take you deep into the heart of this courtroom drama, revealing surprising twists you won't want to miss. The story actually started months before the $30,000 fine showed up in my mailbox. I'd been looking for a quiet place to escape the busy city life, a small cabin where I could unwind on weekends. When I found the perfect spot, just a few miles outside the HOA's official boundaries, I thought it was a dream come true. The cabin was cozy, surrounded by nature, and completely mine. I never imagined that decision would drag me into a legal war. At first, everything seemed peaceful. I enjoyed weekend trips, fixed up the place little by little, and kept to myself. But then, out of nowhere, I started getting letters from the HOA. They claimed my cabin violated their rules and demanded I either tear it down or pay hefty fines. I was stunned. How could they enforce rules on a property outside their control? I tried to reason with them, sending copies of property lines and legal documents proving my cabin was outside their area. But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The HOA board members were relentless. It wasn't just about rules anymore, it felt personal. Their letters became more aggressive, filled with threats and deadlines that made it clear they wanted me to give up and back down. Friends warned me to be careful, saying HOAs could be tricky and sometimes ruthless. But I didn't expect it to get this bad. What surprised me most was discovering just how much power these HOA leaders had and how far they were willing to go to protect their turf. The more I pushed back, the more they dug in their heels. It wasn't just a fight over a cabin anymore. It became a battle about fairness, boundaries, and standing up to an organization that seemed untouchable. Now, with the fine mounting and the threat of legal action looming over me, I knew I had to fight back. Little did I realize, the fight would turn out differently than anyone expected. And the leaders who tried to crush me would soon find themselves facing their own courtroom drama. But that's a story for the next chapter. Stay with me, because things are about to get even more intense. You ever have one of those days where you think, this can't be real life? Yeah, that kind of day. So picture this. I'm just out by the community lake, enjoying a quiet afternoon, tossing in a line, minding my own business. It's something I've done plenty of times before. No signs saying it's not allowed, no complaints, nothing. It's just me, the water, and the peaceful sound of birds. But that peace, It didn't last long. Next thing I know, I hear that all too familiar voice from across the lawn. Yep, it's her. Karen, the HOA board's self-appointed sheriff. She's marching toward me like she's about to make a citizen's arrest. I didn't even get a chance to reel in my line before she started yelling about violating community rules and unauthorized use of HOA property. I asked her to calm down and show me where it actually says I can't fish there. But of course, she just threatened to report me again. Fast forward a few days, I get this envelope in the mail. It's from the HOA. I figured it was another boring update about landscaping or parking. Nope. It was a fine, a $2,000 fine. For fishing, no warning, no explanation. Just a bill slapped in my face. And that's when I knew I wasn't letting this one slide. See? What Karen didn't realize is I'd been documenting everything. Every ridiculous notice, every overstep, every time she bent the rules in her favor. And what I uncovered? Let's just say it didn't look good for the HOA. Turns out the same people trying to hit me with bogus fines had been playing pretty dirty themselves. So yeah, they fined me $2,000 for fishing. But I turned around and fined them $10,000. How? What did I find? And how did it all backfire on Karen and the HOA board? You're going to want to stick around for this because it only gets crazier from here. So here's where it all started. Going downhill, ever since Karen got elected to the HOA board, things in our neighborhood shifted. I mean, we used to be a pretty chill community. People waved, had barbecues, looked out for each other. But once she got that little bit of power, it was like she was on a mission to control every tiny thing. We're talking warning letters for garden gnomes, citations for trash cans being out 30 minutes too early, and even threats over the color of someone's front door. No one was safe, and no one really knew what the actual rules were because she twisted them however she wanted. Now, the fishing thing. That was just the cherry on top. I've lived in this neighborhood for years. The lake's always been open for residents to relax, walk around, or fish casually. No one ever said otherwise. But suddenly, Karen decides I was breaking some made-up rule. I started asking neighbors if they'd ever heard of this fishing ban. Most of them just rolled their eyes and said Karen had been cracking down on random things lately. Some even admitted they stopped going outside just to avoid her. That's when I realized this wasn't about the fishing. This was personal. Karen had a habit of targeting people who questioned her. A few months back, I spoke up during a community meeting about transparency with funds, and she didn't like that. She gave me this fake smile and said she appreciated the concern, but I could feel the tension. Ever since then, I noticed the little things, extra HOA notices on my door, passive-aggressive emails, and now this fine. But what she didn't count on was me fighting back. I wasn't about to roll over and let someone like Karen bully me out of my own rights. So I started digging in what I found buried in those HOA records. Let's just say that was the turning point. I didn't even know where to begin at first. The HOA bylaws were a mess, dozens of pages, vague language, and barely any digital records. But the moment I got my hands on a few past financial reports, I knew something was off. There were maintenance fees paid to contractors who didn't even exist online. Landscaping charges that seemed way too high for the few bushes that got trimmed. And strangely, a pattern of payments always signed off by the same three people: Karen, the HOA treasurer, and someone listed as a consultant I'd never heard of before. So I started asking quiet questions. Not loudly, just subtle, friendly conversations with a few neighbors. Turns out I wasn't the only one with questions. One guy, Mike, said he got fined for unauthorized use of his garage because he was working on his classic car. Another neighbor, Lily, mentioned how she suddenly had to pay extra security fees after she asked for an itemized budget at a community meeting. Everyone had a story, but no one had connected the dots until now. Meanwhile, Karen was still watching me like a hawk. I noticed her walking past my house more than usual, jotting notes in her little binder. It was almost like she knew I was onto something. The tension was getting thick. One afternoon, I saw her talking to our mail carrier, casually pointing toward my house. Was I being paranoid? Maybe. But the timing didn't feel like a coincidence. Behind the scenes, I was piecing together emails, meeting notes, and old newsletters. I even found a few residents who used to be on the HOA. Board one of them agreed to talk. He mentioned how things changed quickly after Karen came in, especially with how decisions were made behind closed doors. He suspected money wasn't being used how it should be, but couldn't prove it back then. That was the missing piece I needed. Because if I could connect that suspicion with the records I had now, the HOA wouldn't just owe me an apology. They'd owe the entire neighborhood answers and maybe a whole lot more. Things really started heating up after that conversation with the former board member. He didn't have hard proof, but what he gave me was enough to connect the dots. He mentioned and named someone who used to handle vendor contracts before Karen pushed them out. I tracked that person down through LinkedIn, sent a polite message. And to my surprise, they responded. We met at a local cafe, and they brought a small stack of old invoices and emails. And that's where everything changed. The consultant the HOA kept paying turned out to be Karen's cousin. No business license, no website, no actual work done, just repeat payments, listed as community improvement consultations. And it gets worse. The landscaping company that was supposedly trimming hedges every other week, run by someone tied to the treasurer's family. Same story, huge checks, barely any work. All quietly approved during closed meetings with no record sent to the rest of the residents. At this point, my hands were shaking. I had screenshots, documents, testimonials, but I had to be careful. If I went public too soon, they'd bury a Tor twisted against me. So I played it smart. I printed everything out, organized a timeline, and quietly started speaking to other neighbors I trusted. The more I shared, the more people began coming forward. One woman said she was threatened with foreclosure over an unpaid fee she never even got a notice for. Another said her security camera caught someone from the HOA taking photos of her backyard. At night then, just as I was putting together a case to bring to the larger community, I got an envelope on my doorstep. No return address, just a single piece of paper inside. It was a notice saying I was in violation of HOA conduct and being referred to legal counsel. No specifics, no explanation, just a threat. That's when I knew I was getting too close. But they didn't scare me. If anything, that envelope just confirmed I had something worth fighting for. Because what Karen and the HOA were hiding wasn't just petty fines, it was something much bigger. And I was ready to expose it. I figured that mysterious letter would be the last scare tactic they'd try, but I was wrong. Way wrong. A few days later, I came home to something even weirder. My mailbox was open, the flag pulled up, and inside was a crumpled copy of the HOA bylaws, highlighted in red ink. Whole sections were circled, notes scribbled in the margins. One part had "You agreed to this" written over and over again, like some passive-aggressive warning. I'd be lying if I said it didn't rattle me. This wasn't about a fine anymore. It was turning into something personal, almost obsessive. At that point, I decided to dig deeper into the legal side of things. I called a local attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. I wasn't even planning to sue, just wanted to know if I had a leg to stand on. But when I walked her through the documents, her expression changed. She leaned forward and said, "This looks like financial misrepresentation, maybe even fraud." That's when the stakes changed completely. This wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. It was potentially criminal. But just as I started preparing to take this higher, another bombshell dropped. Mike, the same neighbor who'd helped me earlier, got a letter too. But his wasn't about conduct. It was a cease and desist, accusing him of slander for speaking out against the HOA. Karen wasn't just coming after me now. She was trying to shut down anyone connected. To me, it was like a full-on cover-up in motion. And then came the second twist I didn't see coming. While digging through archived community newsletters, I found something odd. An announcement from years ago about a rule vote that supposedly banned lake fishing. But here's the catch: there's no record of that vote ever taking place. Number? Signatures. No minutes. Nothing. It was completely made up. Karen had forged an entire rule to go after me. That changed everything. Because if she faked one rule, how many others were fake too? I knew I was close to blowing this wide open. But I also knew the moment I did, things would explode.